Hey, this is Anney.
And Samantha.
And welcome to Stuff I Never Told You, a production of iHeartRadio. And welcome to another edition of Happy Hour. As always, drink responsibly if you choose to do so. Are you sipping on anything, Samantha?
Water. I keep myself hydrated.
I'm sipping on warm beer.
Oh, no.
Warm beer. We are, unfortunately, we weren't able, Samantha and I, to work out our vacation dates at the same time.
No.
So it's been a bit of a scramble covering the content. So this one is going to be kind of a shorter one, I think. Who knows? I did want to start it. This one's a bit all over the place. It's stuff that I cut from my previous happy hour on gay animals. That because that episode was going a bit longer, I didn't get to. And because Pride Month is coming to a close, I thought I would talk about it. But speaking of gay animals, I did want to mention some thoughts some people wrote in about that one.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So first of all, Michelle reminded me, I totally forgot about this. So if you haven't listened to that episode, I was lamenting the fact that this documentary came out, which I still haven't seen, but it was about like gay behavior in the animal kingdom. And I was talking about, I had experienced that the backlash that came from conservatives about that documentary of that's not natural, animals don't do that a lot. And so I was sort of lamenting that, and I was talking about how I don't think we should compare. That shouldn't be like our benchmark.
Right.
But I said at the end, it's not that I'm not interested in that, because I'm a huge dork and I love nature and I love animals. So I was like, hey, please send in if you've got like your favorite queer behavior in the animal kingdom. Yes. So Michelle reminded me there is the book And Tango Makes Three. It's a children's book. It's illustrated, and it's about the two male penguins that came together and raised a young penguin together. Yeah. If I'm remembering correctly, this happened like in a New York zoo, but it was like based on a like real thing that happened. But here's the note from Michelle. You asked for our favorite gay activities among animals. I've come across more than one story about pairs of male penguins raising children together. It's super sweet, and if the conservatives want to use animal activity to decide what should be done, here's proof that two men can raise a child together. And unfortunately, I love that you brought this up, but unfortunately, this is one of the most banned books in the U.S.
Of course. Surprise.
But that was really interesting in contrast with a message we got from Lena, who brought up this point that I actually hadn't really heard. But when Lena sent it to us, I was like, oh, yeah, that makes sense. Lena wrote, I had a biology class in undergrad wherein we looked at how physical anatomy influenced different animals' mating practices. So having some awareness of how the animal kingdom behaves when it's getting its frisky on seems really unsettling to me too. I've also heard a different take on human sexuality, focusing on same-sex attracting and sexual behaviors that's just as weirdly homophobic. I've heard some religious folks make the argument that because same-sex behavior happens in the animal world, that humans shouldn't emulate it because God put us in charge of all the animals. And since we are above them in the eyes of God, we can't possibly be gay because of that. It's all very bend over backwards to uphold the bigotry.
Right.
I had never heard that, but when you say that, that makes complete sense to me that people use that argument. And it is fascinating how, as you say, clearly either way, it's unnatural in the animal kingdom, so you shouldn't do it. Or it's unnatural because animals do it, so you shouldn't do it.
And I've definitely heard it as like, you're not an animal, don't do that. You're not in the, like all these things. So how does it, and it has typically come from a conservative side of that as well. So you're like,
Yeah. And like I said, I know all of us have experienced this, but sort of the way that the argument is articulated around men are just inherently biologically sexual beings.
Right.
And so that to me sounds like you're saying they're animal. Like you're saying they're animalistic and they're instinctual. So that would imply, okay, then we aren't above animals.
Right.
But then you're also saying like it just feels that, as I said in that episode, I can't square this. I just can't square it.
Right.
Because it feels very it just to me feels that whole boys will be boys, they're not in control feels like you're talking about not a human.
Right. This goes back to what we've talked about many times where they're like, women can't lead.
Yeah.
Like this scenario, because they're not manly enough, because, men are leaders and they're in control and women are emotional. But then you're like, all these other things are like, but you excuse men and also make them seem really, really ignorant and naive. Like they can't raise children. They can't be alone with children type of conversations, or they shouldn't be expected to clean anything because they don't know how to do that. Like this level of like, but then which one is it? And then it's that same conversation of like, yeah, but you're saying it's because of this that they shouldn't be doing this, or it's because of that they should be doing this, but yet you're using both. Like you're straddling the fence once again, and you're kind of making this an oxymoron in itself.
Yeah, that's a good point. That's a good point about like the raising of children. Because in at least like Western US society, it was perceived as, and still is, we've talked about it many times, like women do that. Men, I guess I should say Western US, like a modernized society. I don't know. Because we've talked about how Indigenous people, that was not the case. But like, yeah, the men aren't really involved in raising the children. They're more involved in like working and bringing home money. So it is interesting that, yeah, you're also saying they can't do that.
Right. But they can do this other thing that's way more responsibility. You're like, and
it's how many times have we heard the like religious man cheats on his wife, but that was like temptation or his like proclivity of just being a man. That's just what happens when these penguins.
These penguins. Exactly.
I guess what I'm trying to say is it's so manufactured. It's so just to keep the patriarchy in place. Whichever story you're going to tell, they'll spin it whichever way.
Right.
Yeah. So I'm glad. Thanks to both of those listeners for writing in with that. Because the
penguin story, I know has been around, but it makes me go back to the Parks and Rec episode.
Oh, which one?
You don't know the way where she does a cute thing and has a penguin wedding. Turns out that they're both male. Everybody gets in arms and they're like, you are, promoting homosexuality and all these things. And they're like, they actually are mating and are together. And then she takes them to a more open city area so they can live happily together.
Right. Oh my gosh. I totally forgot about that.
I always think about that. I don't know why.
That sounds like we just recorded an episode on But I'm a Cheerleader. That sounds like the most absurd conversion therapy for animals now.
Like, good luck with that. Have fun with this.
Yeah, and I do feel like there's a third thing which is probably the most accurate, but it's still weaponized sometimes, where it's just like, yeah, like the animal's gonna hump you. I don't know what to say about it.
That's just the whole little conversation about dominance. And my female dog, she humps. Like it is what it is a thing from either one. I mean,
yeah, it's just fascinating.
Yes,
to me.
Yes,
to me, these arguments.
It's fascinating and sad.
It's really sad. It's honestly bumming me out because I just feel like I said, I love like nature documentaries. Right. I love that kind of stuff. And now it's become politicized. I mean, I'm sure it always was, but it feels like now it's become this huge argument point that I have heard.
I think it's just a regurgitation because it comes back again, like all these things. Like you would think at this point, it's like, that is so outdated and already been proven wrong. Why are we back here again? But then we've got this new generation of adults who were not adults at the time when it was happening. So they bring it back without fully thinking it through. So, but it is like constant. It's like, why are we doing this? Why are you doing this?
There's no need for this.
It's unnecessary.
It is really unnecessary. That and Tango Makes Three is a very nice book.
Yeah.
It's very lovely.
It's supposed to be cute. Let it be.
Well, listeners, thanks to both of these listeners for writing in. First of all, cheers to everybody. We love hearing from you. If you have any more thoughts about this, I would love to hear them. Just your thoughts in general. We didn't get to the other thing I was going to talk about because it's about fan fiction, and I was just a little worried I'd go off the rails.
We'll come back to it.
We'll come back. But I've got some exciting updates.
Ooh, I'm excited.
Oh my gosh. Things are happening. Things I didn't know would happen. Well, in the meantime, listeners, if you would like to contact us, you can. Our email is stephanie@momstuff@iheartmedia.com. You can find us on Twitter at momstuffpodcast or on Instagram and TikTok at Stuff I Never Told You. We have a TeePublic store and we have a book you can get wherever you get your books. Thanks as always to our super producer Christina, our executive producer Maya, and our contributor Joey.
Thank you.
And thanks to you for listening. Stuff I Never Told You is a production of iHeartRadio. For more podcasts from iHeartRadio, you can check out the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, wherever you listen to your favorite shows.